with today's webinar. And we are really pleased to start the first of a three-part series on the student aspirations and the work and leadership of the Quabbly Institute, and really with Dr. Mickey Corso, who is our presenter this afternoon. Dr. Corso has been working with the state of Montana around the 8 student aspirations. We'll be sharing some aggregated data as well as doing a lot of innovative work with the My Voice survey, which he will talk about. Mickey, just so you know, we have folks from all over the state, and we do have one of our licensed mental health centers of full counseling solutions who provides mental health services in the Missoula area, and they've shifted their entire staff meeting to participate. So we'll probably have folks participating and joining the call throughout the presentation. For those of you that have any questions, you can put them in the chat box, and Mariola and I will address those at the end. And just like our last webinar in December, we'll have a evaluation and a very brief feedback form that you can give us feedback with. If you'd be willing to fill that out, we'd appreciate that. I think with that, thank you so much, Mariola, with your work and the IDA partnership and your support, and Mickey for all your work, and take it away.
Great, thank you, Erin. And it's good to be talking to the good people of Montana. Some of you may know that Aspirations work has been in the state of Montana for about 5 years now. It started out in Phillipsburg with the District of Phillipsburg becoming a demonstration site of the Quabbly Institute. It's a 3-year process where we work with schools and do professional development. We spent a couple of years in Paulson, Montana. Just so beautiful there. And then we met Steve York there. And when Steve York went to OPI, he invited us to come and do statewide work. And the bulk of our work for the last few years has been through MBI, the Montana Behavior Institute. I think that's what the I stands for. And so we've done some workshops with them. We're working with the MBI coaches. But somewhere along the line, Erin was in an audience and started to see some of the connections between our work, what I'm going to share with you today, and the field of mental health. It's not the first time someone has noticed those connections, but I have to say Erin's done a good job of sort of pursuing it better than others have. And I myself am intrigued by it. It is no part of my professional experience at all, that field of mental health. I'm a former high school teacher, former college professor and administrator. I've been working with the Quabbly Institute for about 10 years now. And you know, I'm not an expert in nothing. I mean, when I say that, there's a lot of negatives there. But what I know about is the 8 conditions and the guiding principles in education. So I'm very much dependent upon you today, especially towards the end, to think about, as others have, about this intersection of this sort of general approach to a school's climate and culture, and you know, that area that you are all experts in. That's true of all of our work. I never try to pretend to be an expert in a particular school. I don't know anything about Phillipsburg, Montana, or Paulson, Montana. I know about, and we've done a lot of research. The Quabbly Institute has done a lot of research on schools in general and kids in general, teaching in general. But every group of educators working in a school, they're the experts. That's our approach anyway. They are the experts in that particular school, as you are the experts in your field and in the group of students that you work with. So let me share with you a little bit about our work, and hopefully it'll make some connections for you. The broad sort of catch-all phrase for our work is aspirations. We call it student aspirations work. And basically, you know, I've been an educator for about 30 years, and I don't see really the point of schools anymore if they're not for helping students achieve their aspirations, their goals. they've become sort of test-taking factories or places where every kid's supposed to get into Harvard or something like that. That whole path we've been on for a while about getting kids college ready. A lot of people are saying that was a misstep. So I say college career ready. It's really just be ready. I mean, schools are places that really are just supposed to prepare kids to be ready for what? Well, I mean, the for what is for whoever they want to be, whoever they're becoming. That's the goal of school, as far as I can figure out, to prepare kids to be ready for their lives. And yeah, for some kids that'll be college, and for other kids it'll be careers. For some kids it'll be a job, or some people's goals and aspirations are just to be happy, to be safe, to have a family, to live a life of integrity. So even aspirations are not always career oriented. We define aspirations as the ability to dream and set goals for the future while being inspired in the present to reach those dreams. So whatever that future dream is, on a range of things that are not only a range from, to be happy to be the president of some company someday, but also the term of the future is, starting tomorrow, we could say, and then extending to my last day, right? So there are some students we've talked to whose future is the weekend. When you ask them what are they thinking about their future, they're saying, I think I'm going to a party this weekend. And so that's, we have to consider that. Little kids, especially, like really little kids, some of their goals are, about making sure they finish all their homework this afternoon. And then obviously as kids get older into high school, they do start to think a little further down the road. And almost everybody has a common sense understanding of this idea of aspirations that includes the future. So that's almost always a part of, if you're just, do that man on the microphone thing, on the street thing, and ask people what an aspiration was, almost everyone would say about the future. But what Russ Quaglia started to think about 30 years ago when he began his work into student aspirations was that genuine aspirations include a present aspect. I have to be doing something right now if I have a genuine aspiration for something. So aspirations as distinguished from pipe dreams. Aspirations are things that I strive for in the present. So if I have an aspiration to run a marathon, in April, I should be running almost every day right now. I should be doing something right now. So I'm going to talk about this aspirations framework, and it has 4 parts to it. And this is the first part. It's this definition of aspirations, that is the ability to dream and set goals for the future while being inspired in the present to reach those dreams. If we go back to what I said earlier, I don't know the purpose of school anymore if it's not to help kids dream about the future and inspire them in the present to reach those dreams. For some kids, that will involve test taking and academics, but not for most. So that's part of what we're up against when we look at the sort of traditional inherited model of school. So when you take that definition, if you sort of want to analyze it a little bit and do a dreaming axis and a doing axis, you can see we can wind up with these sort of 4 quadrants. And it's not to put kids in a box or pigeonhole them. It's more like a dynamic continuum, a spectrum. Some days I'm hibernating too, so we can't always be all of us in the upper right-hand quadrant all the time. But we can think about students' experiences in these 4 categories. And so there would be low dreaming, low doing, right? Kids who, when you ask them what their plans are, they kind of say, I don't know. And when you ask them, well, what are they interested in? What are they engaged in? What are they doing right now? What subjects do they like in school? What sports do they play? They say nothing. So these kids who are low dreaming and low doing, and one of the actually really fun parts of my job, and something I've done quite a bit of in Montana actually, is focus groups with kids, talking to groups of kids and sometimes interviewing kids. And doesn't give me any pleasure to say I've met kids in this category who are low dreaming, low doing. We can get into all the causes of that. and I'm sure in the mental health field there might be many complicated causes for a student being low dreaming and low doing, but that's definitely something we want to think about and address. And there's kids that are high dreaming but low doing. I've talked to these kids too. For these kids, everything's great, everything's fantastic. They're gonna be a professional athlete, or they're gonna be a millionaire by the time they're 30. And when you ask them what they're doing to get there, most of them look at you like you have the problem. Like, why I'm supposed to be doing something? So this is not also, just having big ideas and big plans and big dreams for the future doesn't always translate into success. There has to be a commensurate activity in the present to get there. There's another group of kids that are high doing and low dreaming. These are kids who work really hard in school. They're doing everything the adults are asking of them. They're passing the tests. They're joining all the clubs. But when you ask them, okay, well, what's the point of this? Like, why are you working so hard? They're not sure. They might mumble something about getting into college or because my parents tell me I should or something. There's an interesting documentary that's making its rounds. You have to I think, ask to have it screened. It didn't show up in the theaters the way Waiting for Superman did. I don't know if you're familiar with that documentary, but right after Waiting for Superman, in which that movie, the bad guys were lazy teachers and the good guys were charter schools and blah, blah, blah. The movie that came out right after that, to less fanfare, was a movie called The Race to Nowhere. It was also an educational documentary. And in that movie, the bad guys were the college board and parents that make their kids be in, 5 different clubs. The Tiger Mom, I don't know if you've heard about the Tiger Mom. Those are the bad guys. And the good guys were parents who tried to balance their kids' experience with play, and teachers who didn't give any homework and that kind of a thing. Well, the title of the movie itself captures this category of perspiration. It's a race to nowhere. But one of my favorite lines in the movie comes from a young lady who took the AP French test. And she said to her mother, "Thank goodness I passed the AP French test. Now I never have to speak French again." And I think that line perfectly captures this category where we've made it so much about passing tests and taking tests, and for schools making adequate yearly progress every year and all that. And we've lost sight of the real purpose of it, the real goal of it all, which again is to help kids get ready to inspire them in the present to reach their dreams. So here we have the category of aspiration, right? And that's when a student, a young person, puts their dreaming and their doing together. And that's the goal. I think that's the goal of education. I've talked to lots of kids in this category too. It's great. Kids who are really into their computer-assisted design classes, that's their doing. Why? Because they want to be structural engineers. Kids who are really into math and geometry. Why? Because they want to be carpenters. And that whole sort of range of things that kids are good at and talented at, and that floats their boat, and that they become interested in, connecting those interests to their futures. That's one way to get into aspirations. But then the other thing is to sort of think out loud with kids about their futures. What are they thinking of? And then to connect that back to their doing. So if you didn't know if you wanted to be a carpenter, that you should be turning in your geometry homework, that would be a good connection to make. A couple years ago, I was working with a group of students in California, and the teachers gave a survey called an I Know My Class survey to find out what their students' experience of engagement was in their classes. One of the questions on the survey is, "My teacher knows my hopes and dreams." And this particular teacher, a lovely woman, very good teacher, I had observed her class actually, came in low from her students. About 20% of the students said that she knew her kids' hopes and dreams. So she wanted to correct that, and she asked the kids to all, write a little essay about their hopes and dreams. And this was in April. I think it was late March, early April. And one young lady wrote that, she was planning on becoming a nurse, to which the biology teacher responded in the professional development we were doing, "Darn, I wish I had known that in September, because obviously my biology class, I could have given her different labs and different reading assignments that might have made my class more interesting given her goal to become a nurse. So that's the idea, to connect present doing with future dreams. And so that's the first of the four-part framework, really understanding what aspirations are. So the question then becomes, right, how do you get kids out of hibernation, out of imagination, out of perspiration? How do you get them moving up into that upper right-hand quadrant? How do you get them into aspirations? Well, that's where the second part of the framework comes in, because there's a lot of research out there, not just ours, but a lot of other research that says there are basically three guiding principles. The guiding principles are self-worth, engagement, and purpose. So bottom line is, kids who dream about their future and are inspired in the present to get there, they believe in themselves, right? Just think about it from a common sense point of view. I wouldn't be able to go after an aspiration that I didn't believe I could attain. Those of you who have met me, I'm about 5'6". I loved playing basketball as a kid. I had never had an aspiration that I was going to be in the NBA. It was not part of my self-worth, if I could put it that way. I derived my self-worth in other places. But the only way to have aspirations is if you have some self-belief, self-value, self-worth. The second guiding principle is engagement. I have to be emotionally, intellectually, and behaviorally engaged in what's going on in my life, in the school, in my classes. And then finally, a sense of purpose. I have to have intention and commitment, and part of purpose is thinking beyond myself. So students who have aspirations, who are not hibernating or just pie in the sky by and by, or who are not just sweating their way through school and not seeing the point of it, that group of kids, they have self-worth, they're engaged in their classes and school, and they see a sense of purpose. So the third part of the framework, so the definition is the first part, the guiding principle is the second part. The third part of the framework is how you create self-worth in a school environment. And that's where these, you may have heard about the 8 conditions come in. A lot of the schools that we work with have posters of the 8 conditions. So kids need to feel like they belong. Belonging is being able to be yourself and still be part of a group, a community. So I don't have to sacrifice who I am to be part of the group. So that's belonging. And when I feel like I belong, my self-worth grows. Heroes, trusted others, people I can talk to, people I respect, people I believe care about me. I need heroes to develop my self-worth. And then a sense of accomplishment. And we define a sense of accomplishment as being recognized for effort and perseverance and good citizenship, not just for sort of academic end product. There's a lot of studies out there that talk about how when we only focus on sort of what students produce in school, the end product, whether it's academic or athletic or artistic, and don't spend a whole lot of time recognizing the effort that it takes to get that end product, what happens is kids become, the word we use a lot is grade conscious. And so they become focused on the end product. And then how you get to that end product, might vary. I'll put it that way. I know, speaking for myself, not every A I got in school, and I was almost a straight A student, not every A am I proud of how I got it, because I was a very grade conscious kid. And so it wasn't about effort, it was about cramming and sometimes about cheating. And we talked to a lot of kids today who, in a lot of schools, cheating is just rampant. I mean, all kinds, from swapping homework to helping each other out with tests and things. So if we were to just zero in on a few of the indicators that some of the things we've seen in the state of Montana. So these are some of the results. So you see about half of the kids in Montana feel like teachers care about them as individuals. Talk to kids in focus group, do teachers care about you? They say, well, what do you mean? I said, I mean as a person, as an individual, no. Do they care about me as a student? Do they want me to do my work and turn in my homework and pay attention in class? Yeah, they do care about me as a student, but that doesn't distinguish me from anybody else in their class. They don't care about me as an individual. At least only 53% of students say that teachers care about them as an individual. This is an interesting number. 47% of students say teachers care if I'm absent from school. Russ Qualia has said that if he had a one-statement survey, that would be the question. Do kids even believe we care if they're there, if they're sitting there? And then you see the other results. I won't go through all of them. Obviously, there are a lot of issues with respect. And the results we see in Montana are not very different than what we see elsewhere in the country. So, but you see, not a lot of kids are having positive experiences of relationships with teachers, despite the fact that almost every teacher I've talked to, and certainly every teacher survey we've ever given, 100% of teachers say they care about kids, they respect kids. And so that disconnect is a part of the problem. Engagement in the literature is all about, affective engagement. We call that fun and excitement. You can say emotional engagement or affective engagement, fun and excitement. Losing track of space and time, being emotionally sort of tied in and hooked into what's going on in school and in classes. Curiosity and creativity is the way we talk about intellectual engagement. So kids who are curious ask why, kids who are creative ask why not. And then spirit of adventure is our sort of term for behavioral engagement. Are students willing to take the healthy risks that are necessary to learning? Talk to plenty of kids who are afraid to fail. Talk to kids who are afraid to succeed. More than once have I heard from a focus group, well, you can't raise your hand in that class because if you raise your hand and you look stupid because you're asking a question or don't know the answer, you get made fun of. And if you raise your hand and look smart, like you do know the answer or are going to answer somebody else's question, you're going to get made fun of. So you can see if it's not cool to be dumb and it's not cool to be smart, you're kind of jammed up for speaking out loud in class. So spirit of adventure is about healthy risk-taking, keeping it focused on the learning, not on the being right. I don't know how failure became a dirty word in schools because most of what I've learned best and most deeply in my life, I learned from failure, not from easy success. So engagement is a multifaceted phenomena made up of those three dimensions. Again, you see in Montana, 46% of kids say school is boring. About 2/3 say they're encouraged to be creative in school. About 43% see the connection between what's happening in their classes and their everyday lives. I'm giving you just here a sampling of My Voice results. There are a total of 69 statements on a My Voice survey. So the last guiding principle, purpose, has two conditions that go with it. To create purpose, students need experiences with decision making and being held accountable to those decisions. We call that leadership and responsibility. So it's not leadership as we define it is not about being on student government or being the captain of some sports team. That's a part of it. It's not excluded. But really it's leadership in terms of leading your life. Leadership and it's like the opposite of drifting or being a victim. So leadership in the sense of no, I make choices. And the choices I make have consequences. And when we as adults hold students accountable to the decisions they make, that helps them develop purpose. And so you can't separate leadership and responsibility. One of the miscues we see a lot is that kids are given some decision-making opportunities in a school, and then when they make a mistake, they inevitably will make a mistake, the adults rush in and clean it up. And make it all better. And that doesn't always help. Kids don't learn consequences that way. And that and the combination of that and sort of the arbitrary consequences that schools sort of assign students sometime. So anyway, without going further into that. And then confidence to take action. Confidence to take action is an interesting sort of interplay between skill level, a student's ability, and then what teachers expect from the student and the support that teachers provide. So if you picture I'm Italian, so maybe I talk with my hands a lot. But if you picture my hand at about mid-level, and then my other hand with expectations is just a little bit above the hand that represents skill, right? So if a teacher's or any adult's expectation of a student is too high above their ability, the student feels like, oh, I can never do that, and so they give up. If the expectations are below that other hand, expectations are too low, we know that students live down to our expectations as well. So my expectations have to be just a little bit more than the student, him or herself, feels like they can do, just right above their ability. And then support has to be also just right underneath, not pressed up against the other hand, not supporting it fully, because that doesn't create any confidence to take action. That creates the experience of leaning on, of someone being a crutch for me. And then obviously, if the support is nowhere to be found, it's too far below, I get nervous, I flounder, and I don't feel like there's any help available, and I also sort of don't, move up. A lot of these ideas about expectations, skill, and support actually comes from the field of gaming. It's one of the things they find drives addiction to video games. So kids become addicted not just to the fun of a video game, but to the learning that they have to keep doing. So, the people who design video games can write algorithms that my skill level is 5, but the game wants me to do a 6, and the support is just underneath that. And it's what creates so much confidence to keep playing, to take action, to keep playing the game. And I think in education, it's an art. It's not engineering. You can't write algorithms, but it's the same sort of formula. Expectations just above skill level, support just below skill level creates confidence to take action. So here's some of the data from My Voice in Montana. You see those first two numbers there, we talk about that as unexploited leadership potential. So 65% of students see themselves as leaders, but not all of those students consider themselves visible enough in a role such that other students would see them as a leader. So there's a lot more room for growth there. Only half the kids know the goals the school is working on. That seems to be an easy enough fix, to get kids to know a school's mission, its academic goals, its social goals. These last two have to do with student voice, obviously. So about 50% of kids believe teachers are willing to learn from students, and 44%, less than half, feel like they have a voice in decision making in school. So that's the framework. I said there are 4 parts to it. We've got a definition of aspirations, that's the first part. We've got 3 guiding principles, that's the second part. And then we've got 8 conditions that help land those guiding principles sort of on the ground. The 4th part of the framework is the part where I said earlier, I have no idea. I don't know what it means to do belonging in any one particular school. What might work to do belonging in the Bronx might not work in Billings. What might work in Billings might not work in Sydney. And so that's where a school has to sort of look at their own student voice results, whether it's a My Voice survey or focus groups or some other sort of way of getting the kids to talk about their experience of these 8 conditions. And then deciding together, staff and students together, okay, how are we going to improve our experience of heroes in this school? So some schools will implement an advisory. Maybe a school's already got an advisory and it's become a glorified study period, so they have to reclaim the advisory. Maybe the school wants to move to project-based learning to do more engagement. I mean, if I were to give you all the sort of 4th parts of the framework that schools have implemented, there would be as many of those as there are schools that we've worked with. So that's sort of the big picture idea. When we work in schools, we're not going to have time to unpack this today, but people in the mental health field are probably very familiar with systems thinking, family systems and social systems and things like that. So you know that the events that happen in the world are based on patterns of behavior, and patterns of behavior are based on systems and structure. So what it takes 3 years to do in a school system like Phillipsburg or Polson is not to explain to a group of middle school teachers what belonging is. That would be insulting. But it does take 3 years to figure out what in the system is preventing some kids from feeling like they belong, or what in the system is preventing teachers from being heroes to kids, and so on. So if we want the event of a student feeling valued or feeling like their teacher cares about them or knows their hopes and dreams, we can't just go at that at the event level. We have to ask, well, what are the patterns of behavior that cause the event of a student feeling valued or a student feeling like their classes matter to them? And then furthermore, we have to ask, okay, if that's the pattern of behavior, if the pattern is that 50% of students are bored in school, what systems are causing that pattern? Because that's the way the whole world works. Sorry about my phone. So when we look at patterns in the Montana data, the Montana My Voice data, we can use a statistical tool called a logistic regression analysis. And I'm not going to, sorry about that. I'm not going to go into the nuts and bolts of a logistic regression analysis, but basically what that analysis does is asks the question, if this thing is likely, how likely is it that something else is likely? I'm going to just throw my phone across the room so it stops ringing in your ear. And so we have these outcome variable called academic motivation. Is a kid motivated to do their best academically? Do they say they work hard in school? Do they set academic goals for themselves? And then we have this set of other indicators on a My Voice survey, some of which you've seen, that are on the left side of the screen there. We can create scales called engagement or teacher support or purpose or self-worth or peer support. So hopefully everybody's with me so far. So kids who are engaged, that first line, kids who are engaged in school are 15 times more likely to be academically motivated. Right? Everybody see that? Kids who feel teacher support are 8 times more likely to be academically motivated. Kids who see a sense of purpose in school, 16 times more likely to be academically motivated. When you take that, that's called an odds analysis, 15 times more likely to be academically motivated. When you take that and multiply it by the number of students in Montana who don't feel engaged in school, 40%, that's what gives you that impact index in the second column. So it's a way of understanding in the state of Montana, or if we were to do this in any particular school, where the most bang for the buck is. So, for example, the odds ratio for purpose is higher. 16 times more likely is higher than 15 times more likely. So the odds ratio for purpose is higher than for engagement. But only 16% of students in Montana are currently not oriented to their future. They don't feel like there's a sense of purpose. So I don't get as much bang for my buck if I work on purpose in Montana. Now, the impact index varies from school to school. So there might be a school where purpose is really the highest impact. But in the state of Montana as a whole, if I were to advise Steve York what to put a professional development effort towards statewide, it would be engagement. Because a lot of kids in Montana don't feel engaged in school. And if they are engaged in school, they would be 15 times more likely to be academically motivated. Even if you were to look at the lowest impact peer support, if you were to create a more a safer, more supportive peer environment, and 55% of students in Montana currently do not feel they are in such an environment, those kids would be 3 times more likely to be academically motivated. So take it down to a particular kid feels bullied, they don't feel like they fit in, they're an outcast, they're an outsider. The school does something to change that situation for that kid, for little Mickey, and sure enough, little Mickey, now that he feels like he belongs and has the support of his peers, he is going to be 3 times more likely to be academically motivated, feeling that peer support than he was beforehand. And so that's the way the odds analysis and the patterns that we see shaping up in the state of Montana. So the question then becomes, what are the systems and structures that create engagement, that diminish engagement? I won't get on I have a lot of soapboxes about the traditional model of school and teaching in discipline silos. And that's a conveyor belt. The hallway is just a conveyor belt to move kids from one expert's box to another. It works great for building cars, and it worked great back in the day when education suddenly became compulsory and we had to educate large populations of people. Using that industrial model, as they say, put a man on the moon. But it is a system that has seen its day for sure, and has outlived its usefulness. And so that's why we see such widespread disengagement in schools. And again, I'm going to assume that most people in the mental health field know that when I'm talking about systems, I'm not just talking about dress codes and other sort of obvious systems, the bell schedule and that kind of thing, but all the ways variables interact in a system. And so with balancing loops, sort of turning into reinforcing loops, and this is one we see a lot in a school system where the symptom in the middle is kids acting up. Kids are getting in trouble and acting up. And the solution, the symptomatic solution at the top that's applied is some kind of discipline measure. They get detention or they get in-school suspension or something like that. But the fundamental solution is engagement. It's the kid is bored, and so that's why they're acting up. And you could just as easily solve their acting up if you got them engaged in school as you could with constantly putting them in ISS. And so it's really sort of changing those approaches, changing the way schools do things at that level. That is the work of the Qualia Institute. So when we work with a school for 3 years, that the whole first year is spent on what I just did in 45 minutes, going through the conditions in depth and getting at some of the ideas in systems thinking. But let me stop there and see what your questions are, what your thoughts are. I myself am very curious about where you see the intersection between what you guys do in school every day to help kids who are having a difficulty, and some of the ideas I've shared with you. So I'll stop there, Erin, and see how you want to handle questions.
Great. Vicki, thank you so much, and I'm continue to be inspired by your work, and I think the holistic approach of schools. I'm not seeing any questions right now in the chat box. And I know that we have a spectrum of professionals on the call, from clinical supervisors to mental health providers and school counselors. If folks would like to maybe unmute with a #6, we could maybe, if you just want to ask a question, or go ahead and type in the box. So as we give folks an opportunity to answer questions, I'm wondering, Mickey, if you could give us some examples, either in Montana or around the country, of how the focus groups and following up with the surveys have been utilized to make some real change impacts in whole school environments.
Yeah, let me start with a kind of elementary school example, if that's all right, because it's kind of fresh on my mind. I was just talking about it this morning. Elementary school in rural Ohio, having significant problems with lunch, chaos at lunch, just kids running around, screaming, yelling. And the adult solutions to this are command and control, right? I mean, yelling louder than the kids yell, as if this was a good solution. Giving kids detention, pulling them aside and making them sit alone by lunch for lunch. Okay, so those are the adult solutions. So talk to kids in focus groups after the My Voice survey, and what's going on at lunch? This is fourth graders now. We're talking to fourth graders. Said, well, the problem with lunch is, and again, you can't see me, so it's hard to illustrate it, is when you get in line for lunch, you go into the cafeteria part where the lunch ladies, put the food on the tray. It's a very narrow area, yeah. And when you get your tray and you go through and you get your food, when you come out of the other side of that room, the kitchen room area, into the cafeteria, the new policy is you have to just file straight into the bench seats. Can you picture them? These long bench seats that cafeterias have in their gym cafetoriums, and they just you have to slide in, so which means that the people you get in line with at the front of lunch are the people, if you don't like them, you're stuck with for the rest of lunch. So you're not anyway sitting with your friends or the people you'd like to sit with. So the fourth graders told us that what we need to do is to be able to, in an orderly way, get in line with our friends so that once you're in the, where they serve the food, you can come out with your friends and be able to sit with your friends at lunch. So all that chaos, try to command and control, right? The chaos of kids trying to be with their friends at lunch, who they've been separated with because of the way the school is structured for classes. So there's no way to do it. It's impossible. So what the kids did, that they developed a safer, for one thing, and more reasonable system for after class was over to find their friends, get in line with their friends without all the screaming and yelling, and have a lunch where they could socialize with the people they want to socialize with. So that's a great example, I think, of in the cafeteria of creating not only a more socially acceptable environment from the kids' point of view, but a safer environment, and one in which, by the way, the teachers' relationships, and I might add the custodians and the lunch ladies' relationships with the students improves, because the students see it from a completely different point of view than the adults do. And so by involving student voice, you get to a solution like that. I don't want to steal any of Keith's thunder next time. He's got some great stories there in Belt of when you entertain and take seriously the student's point of view of things that change and improve and get better. Just finishing up a book, and I had to email him for permission to use that story about the bells. Kids coming late and being late for class and late after lunch, and he'll tell it better than I do next week. But basically, the kids said, "Stop ringing the bell," and the adult solutions would be ring the bell louder. Ring it longer, put adults in the hallway to hurry kids along, right? Come on, didn't you hear the bell? These are the grown-up solutions. The kids said, stop ringing the bell. And this is counterintuitive to the adults. But think about it. Bells were put in schools, because schools are sprawling, big, large buildings like factories, like prisons, and so we had a synchronized time, right? Because you and I, well, I don't know about you, Aaron, but I know when I grew up, the clock in one room was one time, the clock in another room was a different time, one clock didn't work, so they had to ring a bell so everybody knew what time it was. But if I asked everybody right now to take out their cell phone and type what time it is in the chat window, everybody would say exactly the same time. It is, right? Look on your computer, it's 5:12. Well, actually, I'm on the East Coast, so it's 3:12 there. But that's what it says on everybody's computer who's online right now, right? So time is absolutely synchronized at a personal level like it never has been before. The kids know this, and so that's why they say, why are we still ringing the bells? And what happened in that school? The tardiness problem went away. Kids came early to class. They read a book. They chatted with the teacher. They talked to their friends. But they stopped playing the system, basically, and they stopped saying, well, I didn't hear the bell, or, so those are two, I think, obvious examples. But we've seen everything from kids co-teaching with teachers, lessons, to kids who take over their schools. It takes 3 years to get there, right? But one school we worked with, the kids run the orientation in September. It's the student council president who stands up, not the principal, and says to the student body, welcome to school this year. We're going to have a great year. I want to introduce the new teachers. I want to welcome our new vice principal. I'm actually going to turn it over to our new vice principal in a minute. But first, I'd like Joe, my vice president of student council, to go over some of the new school rules that we have this year. There's a new thing about whatever it is, and so then a kid goes over the dress code. And then finally, a few words from the principal before they kick it back to the student. What a different impression of what school is that sends, right? I mean, this is our school. This school belongs to us, the students. These people, by the way, they work for us, which is why we're introducing them, and not they us. And so, it's different. It's a different way of. It's not turning the asylum over to the inmates, and it's not. I don't like the idea of students as clients and customers. It's the students are partners. They have a partnering role to play with us. It is not, all the examples I would give would be examples where it's not sit and get teachers doing things for kids. It's teachers and students doing things together. So let's see. I do see some questions here. Copies of things. I've never done a webinar. Okay, Corey's good.
What about
branching out?
Your response to the cafeteria, so maybe taken a little bit farther. What about branching out and having kids sit with others so they make new friends, and that might address some bullying issues and some of that?
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's another. Actually, that was in Polson, one of the aspirations team's projects. I forget now when they did it. I think it was once a month they did it. But in the cafeteria, they had a mix-it-up day. So one of the kids on the team, their father was involved with catering somehow. And when you go to a wedding, they have the that thing that holds the number on the table. It says number 1, number 2, so you know where you're supposed to sit. We got a bunch of those, and then they varied it from month to month, but I think the first one was music. So they made a bunch of cards. One card said the Beatles, another card said, I'm going to get myself in trouble here date-wise because I don't know the groups, In Sync, let's see, Madonna, I'm dating myself, the Partridge Family, you get it. So they had more relevant groups, but at each table a kid had to sit with the group that they liked. And so he wind up sitting down with, I didn't know you liked the Beatles. Yeah, I like the Beatles. So instead of just sitting with your usual friendship group or clique, once a month at least in the middle school, they had this sort of mix-it-up experience that was led by and driven by the kids. So yeah, and we issue, we have lots of resources where we give kids challenges, and getting to know 3 new kids is one of those kind of challenges that kids who are on aspirations teams, we have them do that. So yeah, absolutely. There is no, other than another student's confidentiality or another family's confidentiality, we don't believe there's any area of school life that kids should not be a part of. We've had kids in high schools in department meetings. We're starting to have kids on building leadership teams. Absolutely, students should have a meaningful role on school boards. Not the the kid who's just there to report the scores and ask for support for the upcoming play, but genuinely participating in a school board elected by other students. Why not? So yeah. And the questions, I got to switch to my reading glasses, I think, to see those. Collaboration. Are most
schools open to this kind of partnership with students?
No. This is what it takes 3 years to do when we work with schools. There's a lot of fear, I think, in teachers right now. I don't know if this is as true in Montana, but there is a lot of stuff coming into education right now about evaluation and value added, and in fact, I think the traditional sort of approach to schooling was already not very open to student voice, and some of the things that have happened just in the last 2 or 3 years have made it, I would say, worse. But once my experience has been that once teachers have the experience of partnering with students in this deep way, it is so transformative and has such positive results that you can't go back. Most people's fear of this is like, I remember my kids said, I don't want to eat broccoli. Well, did you ever try broccoli? No, but I just don't want to eat it. So once you sort of have some practice experiences, pilot-like experiences with letting students have a voice, and you see, wow, the kids are really much more engaged, or they're having a much better experience of lunch, or whatever it is. They fixed our advisory program. It goes much better. But prior to that experience of schools having that partnership, there is a lot of it ranges from just anxiety, a kind of anxiety, to real, like, I don't get it. I talked to a middle school teacher who said, I don't think I have anything to learn from students. I don't get it. And we went back and forth a little bit, but I didn't. This veteran teacher of 25 years, I didn't convince her. Her graduate degrees in education had taught her everything she needed to know about teaching, and she felt like there was nothing she needed to learn from a student.
Could you talk about sort of the focus group process and how you recommend schools do that, and maybe a quick overview?
Yeah, and I can send you, Aaron, a document that we share with schools about how to conduct focus groups. Basically, we look for about 6 kids in a focus group, and we control for gender and grade. So usually I'm talking to a group of 6 8th grade boys, or 6 10th grade girls. There's a debate in the literature about whether you need to control for gender or not. Some studies say girls talk in front of boys and boys talk in front of girls. Some studies say no, they don't. So we are on the side of caution. We know girls will talk in front of girls and boys will talk in front of boys. So we recommend controlling for gender and grade. Obviously, a 9th grade girl is not going to have as much to say in front of a 12th grade boy, or a 12th grade girl for that matter. So you develop the questions, and the questions usually are based on a My Voice survey. So a school will look at their My Voice results and then say, well, there's something we don't understand about why kids are proud of school, or why they don't think we respect them. So you have about 6 or 7 questions, and obviously you're going to talk to, in a high school, 8 groups of kids. In the middle school, 6 group of kids. In a really, really huge, big high school, you might want to try to talk to, maybe, 12, or even double down and do 16 groups of kids. And you're going to ask the same questions. You're obviously going to ask different probing questions and follow-up questions, but you want to pretty much ask the same questions of each group. And then the goal of conducting focus groups, those of you who remember your qualitative research days, the goal is to become bored out of your mind. Usually if I'm going to do a round of focus groups in a school, probably before lunch I'm bored. And that's the point. Because what I'm looking for is themes. I'm looking for things that repeat themselves from one group to the next. That's what I'm going to put in my report. When that group of juniors rolls in and they're the 5th group, and I know exactly what they're going to say when I ask them, why do you think some teachers don't respect students? And that's what I've heard all morning. That's the goal. That's the point of focus groups, to draw out the themes. If I were to go back to my Prezi for a second over here, themes is just another way of saying pattern of behavior. So we have My Voice surveys, which are patterns of behavior, percentages in agreement, and then the themes are just patterns of behavior in words instead of numbers. And that's it. A lot of the work we've done in Montana, actually, the last couple of years, has been teaching the MBI consultants and school personnel how to conduct focus groups. Obviously, you want to ask open-ended questions. You don't want to prejudice the answers in any way. You need to promise the kids confidentiality. Usually, I find myself explaining what confidentiality is. I just say, I'm going to share what you say, but not who said it. And it's great. In fact, that earlier question, one of the ways to sort of overcome the fear people have of going down the student voice road is to give them an experience in focus groups, and to see how both thoughtful and articulate the kids are in discussing some of the concerns they have about school. Yes, Corey, I have been going around schools in Montana, training schools in both the model that I shared with you, the whole model, and and then also how to do focus groups. And Corey's asking, if you're looking at gender, what about sexuality? Yeah, we don't get into it much. I have just recently seen, there's a whole website actually devoted to the issue of sexuality and gender and LGBT in schools and its relationship to engagement, to say nothing of belonging, obviously. I don't know that literature well enough to comment on it, with any confidence, but I do know there are studies out there.
So we have about 6 more minutes, and we want to leave the last couple minutes for folks to fill out the evaluation. I see there might be one other question coming in.
Okay.
I do want to let you all know that Mickey will be at our MBI Summer Institute the week of June 16th, and he'll be presenting on that Thursday. Is that correct, Mickey?
I believe that's right, yes.
Okay. And if you would like more information about some of this and looking at how you could implement some of this into your own school, Steve York is the contact person at our office, and I'd be happy to share his email with you when I share the document that Mickey will send out about the surveys as well. And as a reminder, Belt High School, Keith Hoyer, that Mickey mentioned earlier, is going to be presenting in March. And he does have at least one, maybe two students that will be presenting with him. So you'll hear from students' voice yourself. And we have Luke Stevens and others at the Independent School District in Billings that will be talking about incorporating the 8 aspirations and this work into their clinical and mental health services through the Yellowstone Boys and Girls Ranch and one of our CSET teams. So we're hoping to take some of this national expertise and build it throughout the tiers and spectrum of needs in responding to students. I'm not seeing any additional questions. Mariola has added the evaluation link in the webinar if you would be willing to take a minute or so to fill that out. Mickey, thank you again for your time and your work, and for everyone, all your time, and please let me know if you have further questions.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. It was